Hello, everyone. Just wanted to talk about something that kind of caught my attention. A tweet that I saw by Jill Colton. And it kind of led down a road I wasn't expecting. And then upon further investigation, it turns out that that she is quite right on a very important matter, and it actually pertains to the conservative leadership race that's going to be coming up very soon. With Andrew Shearer stepping down, there's been a number of names that have been put forward as possibilities. There's been Aaron O'Toole. There has been Michelle Rempel. There has been even the possibility of Rona Ambrose coming back and running as a possible Conservative Party leader. So, what she brought up was, I wasn't expecting to go down this way because she was put out a thread where she was talking about the Postmillennial. But that led into something else, and it's quite interesting, and it should play a factor when it comes to the leadership race. So it's not a long thread. I think it's only about four or so. A little bit more. But it's not too long. So she says here, the Postmillennial is such a subversive publication. It is not conservative. This article alludes to the fact Shearer lost because of his inability to square his personal religious views in a manner that the wider public could trust on protecting gays, lesbians, and trans rights. And she's actually right. The Postmillennial is not a conservative paper. They've actually come out and stated that they're actually supposed to be a free speech platform. Again, we'll end up seeing as time goes by whether that even turns out to be true. But they've had people from both the right and the left that have written on there. So she is right when she says that it's not conservative. She goes on. Meanwhile, it completely leaves out the fact Shearer did not make immigration a significant election issue. Why do you think Bernier stole conservative votes? You think it was because his stance on milk pricing? Do not trust the Postmillennial. I promise you, whoever's behind the company does not care about Canada first. It's pure globalism. Another point, the author writes, but in the field of 12 remaining candidates that include a now viable successor to Shearer, Aaron O'Toole and Lisa Raitt, 13 rounds later, Shearer squeaked out the win, and the rest was history. Except Corey Tanecki was just on CBC saying Shearer's victory was parachuted in by CPC insiders. No mention of the corruption within the party, eh? And not a word that Shearer's main opponent was Bernier, who was the clear favorite by voters, but not by the dairy lobby. And I believe when she's talking about Corey Tanecki, I think that was the author of this one. Well, anyway, it doesn't look like it, but it goes on. So she says that main opponent was Bernier, who was a clear favorite by voters, but not by the dairy lobby. Or the mass migration fan Aaron O'Toole is on the political advisory board for Kansa, basically a bait-and-switch organization that wants free movement and trade alliance with Commonwealth countries like India, Pakistan, and Nigeria. So I thought this was kind of interesting. Like, again, took me a little bit by surprise, but she links to this, a Canuck Law article. And in this, they sort of go into detail a little bit about Kansa. And there's a quick video here that I just wanted to watch part of it with you, because this was at the Conservative Party convention in Halifax, where they voted 97% to 3% in favor of partially erasing Canadians' borders.
This, ladies and gentlemen, is the game-changer policy for our party at this convention. This is the policy that will appeal to freedom of the individual in terms of their purchasing, in terms of their ability to be mobile, whether the individual is a senior or somebody just finishing their university year and wanting to travel in their gap year, or whether it's a young millennial that's looking for global experience for their resume, and on the flip side, for Canadian business that's looking to get the best and brightest talent that they can from anywhere on the planet to catapult our industry here. Lululemon, which is headquartered in Vancouver, has such a big problem with labor mobility justification. Every time one of their executives gets poached by Reebok or by Adidas, they got to go out hunting for a new executive to bring over, and that's very expensive and very time-consuming for them to do. This would allow that labor mobility that we have, and it's a game changer for the party in terms of freedom of business, individual, and mobility.
Thank you. Caucus member, 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Aaron O'Toole. I apologize. I'll stop getting up so often.
but I'm passionate about Kansa. When Brian Mulroney and the Conservative government...
That was Aaron O'Toole, one of the potential leaders of the Conservative Party, potential candidate anyway, that is advocating for Kansa. Now, what is Kansa? We're here on KansaInternational.com and underneath the About Us. Kansa International was founded in January 2015 as the Commonwealth Freedom of Movement Organization and is the world's leading non-profit organization advocating freedom of movement, free trade, and foreign policy coordination between Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom, the Kansa countries. Our campaign advocates closer cooperation between these four nations so they may build upon existing economic, diplomatic, and institutional ties to forge a cohesive alliance of nation-states with a truly global outlook. Which sounds pretty globalist already, but then it goes on. Our proposal ensures that Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom not only sustain economic prosperity and quality of life, but develop travel and employment opportunities for each of their citizens as part of the global initiative of Commonwealth countries. So, first things first, this is a globalist thing to do if you're talking about opening up your borders to foreigners in order to come in, especially when we're talking about employment, because that employment is going to take away from any other citizen from attaining that job in their own country. So that's the first things first. But then this sort of line at the bottom kind of gives it away, where they say as part of a global initiative of Commonwealth countries. Now, at the top, they're talking about Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom. But just remember, the British Empire was huge. It spanned all over the world. And these are what make up the Commonwealth countries, those who are underneath British rule that still at least have some loyalty or some cultural significance to the British Crown. So this wouldn't just be Canada, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand. No. We're talking about countries all over the world. We're talking about India. We're talking about I think Singapore actually at one point was also colonized by the British. We're talking about a host of African countries. If we're talking about Commonwealth countries that can take advantage of this, then we're talking about all over the world, opening up our borders to that. So that is the idea of globalization. And the thing is, too, is this leads the opportunity, if you come over for work, let's say, to actually to get permanent residency and citizenship in Canada. I mean, do you really think it's going to be these countries that they named, the UK, New Zealand, and Australia, that's going to be taking advantage of it? No, it's going to be places like African nations that are going to take advantage of this and flood into our country. And they will have the ability about it, because there's also something called, I think it's called microloans. There are these banks in these countries, and what they do is they will give out loans to these people. So we're talking about, like, you show up and you want to move to another country. So what they do is you hand over everything you have. You hand over your car, you hand over your home, and anything else that you have of possession that the bank can then use. And then they will give you the money to then go out and be able to immigrate to these countries. So these banks are financing the mass migration that ends up happening. So we're opening up our borders with the possibility of opening up to places such as African countries, and then at the same time, that is being financed by the banks in order to ensure that the people can come here. To ensure that people can come here. And then that's going to negatively affect local citizens. That's going to negatively affect Canada. This is a globalized policy that they're pushing for. It's not a nationalist policy. It's not, as Jill Colton put it, a Canada First policy. But then we go over to Kansa. We're over here on their board of directors. And who's advising Kansa? Who is their political advisors? Well, we have Aaron O'Toole, who once again, not only, I believe he ran in the 2017 leadership race, but also seems like he's going to be a contender for the race that's going to be coming up. But on top of that, we've also got Lisa Raitt and Michael Chong. Lisa Raitt, who actually is no longer a member of the Conservative Party, but she was the deputy leader of the Conservative Party and also a candidate in the 2017 leadership race. So was Michael Chong. Michael Chong was in there, and I've spoken about him before because this was the guy that I said he was a red Tory through and through. He was campaigning on a carbon tax. That's not a joke. You can go look it up. The guy was campaigning on implementing a carbon tax. I think he said like a net neutral carbon tax or something along there. But that's what he was trying to campaign on. But he's not alone. These were all conservatives here. We also have Ed Fast. We also have Peter Kent. We've got Todd Doherty. We've got Kelly McCulley. These are all conservative members of parliament. All members of the Conservative Party that are involved with Kansa, this globalist policy. They're their advisors in order to ensure that people all over the world can come into our country, pretty much bypass the immigration process by opening up the borders. Like, you know, when people say that the Conservative is a globalist, party, this is what they're talking about. But then on top of that, not that it's significance anymore, but if we go on back to the Canuck Law article, they go down here, they show some screenshots of a number of MPs who are involved, conservative MPs, and then they even have this. Let me see if I can... Who supports this? Andrew Shearer, up until a few days ago, the leader of the Conservative Party, with a quote, "I very much support a trade deal. Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom have a similar basis of law and the same type of regulations around investment and trade." So he was even supporting this. This is exactly what we're talking about when people are talking about it being a globalist party. So Kansa, whether deliberately or not deliberately, is actually trying to push through the Kalergi Plan, which I've spoken about before. The Kalergi Plan, written by Richard Kalergi, was all about mixing all the races, taking away any sort of race, any sort of culture, any sort of religion, taking that all out of the equation, have the entire world amalgamate into one race, one culture, one group of people that can then be ruled over. So, whether deliberately or not deliberately, that's exactly what they're pushing. And don't forget, the Kalergi Plan was backed by some of the biggest bankers of their time. We're talking about the Rothschilds. We're talking about the Rockefellers. We're talking about, even though he was either just a child or wasn't even born at the time when it was written in the 1920s. We're also talking about George Soros, who later on showed his support for the Kalergi Plan. Also supported by people like Bernard Baruch, the Warburg brothers. These were people who I also spoke about were involved with the Balfour Declaration, all part of the, what was it called? Crap, I can't remember what it was called. They were all part of the same organization. It was like, I think it was just the Zionist movement or whatever they called themselves. But they were all part of the same organization who supported the Balfour Declaration as well as backed the Kalergi Plan. In fact, Richard Kalergi had some quote, which I'm going to paraphrase because I don't have the book in front of me right now, where he's talking about that the European of the future will be a mixture of, will be like a Euro-Negroid mix. And this was the whole plan. It wasn't just about Europe and the West, the Western countries such as Canada and America, but he wanted this all over the world. Every single race, every single religion, every single culture to be completely torn down and replaced with one group of people. And again, whether deliberately or not, Kansa is a part of that. And that is supported by a number of people, prominent people in the Conservative Party, including past contenders for the leadership and possibly current contenders for the leadership. So the Conservatives really are not our friends. They are not a nationalist party. Like they try and toy with this idea like they are a nationalist party, but they are far from it. They're not your friends. Not even close. So I'm going to leave the links to the Canuck Law article as well as the two sections of the Kansa website where you can check this out on your own. And you can see that pushing for this organization is not in Canada's interest. It's not in the UK's interest. It's not in New Zealand's interest. It's not in Australia's interest. This is a detriment to every single one of us. They're not the ones that are going to be benefiting from this. It's going to be people from the third world. And Canada already has some of the fastest changing demographics in the entire Western world right now. We don't need another reason for it to be sped up. Thank you all for tuning in today. I'm Adrian Lloyd. This is just my stupid opinion.